Good afternoon, everybody. This is a meeting of the North Somerset Council Executive. I will do my introduction to introduce you to the protocols of today. I would like to welcome everybody to this virtual meeting of the Executive. Before we move to the formal agenda, there are a few procedural and housekeeping issues to remind you of. This meeting is being held under the virtual meetings regulations using Microsoft Teams. Decisions made by the Executive will have the same standing and validity as they were made at a physical meeting held at the Town Hall. We are streaming today's meeting live on the internet, and a recorded version will be available to view within 48 hours on the North Somerset Council website. Members of the public may see a number of different people on screen during the course of the meeting, but only members of the Executive will make a decision on each agenda item. I would refer councillors to the meeting etiquette as previously circulated. Please remember to use your headphones and ensure your microphone is muted when not speaking. Non-executive members, would you please ensure that your video is turned off when you are not speaking. When you wish to speak, would you please indicate by using the chat function rather than the hand signals function, as it's easy to monitor requests to speak from a single source. I invite each of you to speak by way of a queue system. If you're leaving or returning to the meeting, would you please ensure that I'm aware of this by using the chat function. This is particularly important in respect of any disclosable pecuniary interests where you are not permitted to participate in the agenda item by law. Can I remind members that chat function should only be used for the purposes of requesting to speak or associated matters and not for voting. When proposing a motion, would you please indicate via the chat function you wish to speak and wait and invite you to do so. Please clearly state what you are moving, for example, the recommendation report. If you're seconding a motion, please again indicate you wish to speak and wait for me to call you. Generally, voting at this meeting will be done in reverse order and en bloc. That is, I will firstly request votes against the motion, then abstentions, then all other executive members in the meeting will be taken en bloc as voting for the motion. As chairman, if I determine there should be a vote by roll call, the solicitor will call each executive member in turn by name. Please state clearly if your vote is for the motion, against the motion, or abstain. This will ensure the vote is accurately recorded for more controversial matters and will enable members of the public to observe the vote. Please remember to turn on your microphone when voting and mute when you have spoken. Before moving to the agenda, are there any questions from councillors? Can all members hear and see today's proceedings? Okay, and please ensure that all mobiles are switched off. Okay. So welcome everybody. I'm Don Davis. I'm the leader of North Somerset Council and the councillor for Pill Ward. I'm going to go around the meeting room now and invite all my colleagues to speak. So first of all, Mike Bell.
Good afternoon. I'm Mike Bell. I'm the deputy leader of the council and the exec member for adult social care and health.
Steve Bridger.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Councillor Steve Bridger. I'm Yatton Ward Councillor and Executive Member for Assets and Capital Delivery.
Thank you. Mark Caniford.
Good afternoon. I'm Councillor Mark Caniford and I'm the Exec Member for Place and Economy.
Ash Cartman.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ash Cartman. I'm the Ward Councillor for Long Ashton, Lee Woods, Fayland and Wraxall, and I'm the Executive Member for Corporate Services.
Catherine Gibbons.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Catherine Gibbons. I'm the Ward Councillor for Milton in Weston-super-Mare, and I'm the Executive Member for Children's Services, Lifelong Learning and Skills.
Bridget Petty.
Good afternoon. I'm the Ward Councillor for Banwell and the Executive Member for the Climate Emergency and Engagement.
Okay, and Mike Solomon.
Good afternoon. I'm the Independent Ward Member for Locking, Hutton and Bleedon, and the Executive Member for Neighbourhoods and Community Service.
Thank you, colleagues. And we also have two of our assistant executive members. Nicola Holland.
Good afternoon. I'm Councillor Nicola Holland. I am working on an education project with Councillor Catherine Gibbons.
And we've got Robert Payne. Welcome to your first meeting, Robert. And sorry, Steve Bridger, welcome to your first meeting as well. Robert, sorry.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Robert Payne, Assistant Executive Member for Parking Strategy and Delivery.
Okay, thank you all. So let's move on into the meeting. since the papers were published, there have been some changes to the executive membership, which were published at the meeting of the council last week. Therefore, some of the papers will be presented by different people to those published, and that will be clarified as we go through the meeting. So thank you for that. So item 1 on the agenda is addresses by members of the public. I believe there are none. Can I confirm that to either Sue or Nick, please?
That's correct, Chairman.
Lovely, thank you. And apologies for absence. As we've all introduced ourselves, there are none. Are there any declarations of disposable pecuniary interest? I'm seeing none. Item 4 then is the minutes of the meeting on the 11th of February. Confirmations of the correct record. Do I have a proposer for that? I have Councillor Gibbons, a seconder. I have Councillor Solomon, thank you. Do I have anybody against acceptance? Michelle, no. Any abstentions?
Nothing in chat, Chair.
Lovely. So I'll take those as unanimously agreed. Thank you, colleagues. I now move on to item number 5, where a non-executive council addresses. I believe we do have one, and I think the person who is going to present it is here today to do it. Councillor James.
Yes, thank you very much,
Thank
Chair. So the murder of Sarah Everett on the week of International Women's Day realised a lot of women's fears about gendered violence, about harassment and feeling unsafe in their communities. How in North Somerset will we challenge gendered violence, street harassment and the perception of unsafe streets within all areas of the council rather than just limited to the executive member for community safety? Thank you very much. You've had since March 12th this question was submitted, so hopefully you've had some time to think about it.
Okay. Well, I think, Hugh, thank you for that question. And given that the very wide range in aspects, as you quite rightly point out to it, I'm going to ask each of my colleagues on the executive to consider it within their own portfolio, so we can come to a considered executive view. I think you're absolutely right. We should not silo this. And I would also urge you to take this to the relevant scrutiny groups. Indeed, you could take it to all scrutiny chairs, I think, and ask them the same question and ask it to include within both their work groups and agendas. I have a comment from Mike Bell. Mike.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to say to Hugh and anyone else listening that this is absolutely an issue that we have taken seriously and already started to look at. So a number of colleagues started work with officers back in March to look at the options in terms of safer streets across North Somerset. We have put in an application to deliver some funding to improve the safety of women and all residents across North Somerset in the light of the tragic incident with Sarah Everard. And we are setting up a partnership working group, bringing together key stakeholders from across the community to work particularly on the issues around the safety of women. So I just wanted to say it's absolutely something that officers and a number of colleagues across the council are actively engaged in. We're absolutely taking seriously, and we'll be able to report on the development of an action plan and tangible measures to try and improve the situation over the course of the next few months.
Catherine Gibbons.
Yes, thank you. I was just going to add that we are also very aware of the important role that education can play in this, because if you change people's attitudes and mindset early on, then I think that's key. And I should be looking forward to working with you, Councillor James, as one of our youth champions, and maybe helping us to get that message out there and work with schools and colleges.
Okay. Are there any other comments?
Take up that offer. Thank you very much.
Bridget.
I wasn't going to say anything, but I think that it's come up in council meetings before, and I think that Councillor James would agree that language around perpetrator and language around victim, and acknowledging the role that obviously it is a very sensitive subject, and that recognising that, of course, women have in this case, it was a woman who was a victim of this situation, and it is the perpetrators that we need to work with to see a change, and not solely around the women changing their behaviours to become safer. So I would welcome that any action and any working groups really look at which groups need to be worked with, how we work with those communities, so that it is not a list of behavioural changes that we expect of women and girls, so that they do not end up as victims. Because yes, having lived through this experience as a woman, we need no more conversations about how to keep ourselves safe. We need to change the dialogue now, and I would welcome any work that's.
Yeah.
Okay, and Mark Canniford.
I just wanted to reiterate from Councillor Bell, really, that this work is now ongoing. Our senior officers are fully aware that this is a push from council as a whole, and we do find women in our communities or any member of our community who feels unsafe, we need to do something about it. And we are engaging, and it was very much decided a proper direct plan would be put in place, which everyone would be able to see, because the more people who are put into this, the better results will come out of it. So it is ongoing, and I believe Councillor Mike Solomon will be brought up to speed on this, because it's something he's only just taken over. So I'm sure he'll carry through with it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Michelle, have you had any other requests to speak?
No other requests to speak, Chairman.
Thank you. And I do think that this is massively important work, Hugh, so thank you for raising it here. I would say that this incumbent upon us in terms of the longer, if you look at the local plan today, so things like design, the way we actually lay out our neighbourhoods to make them safe for everybody need to be taken into account, not just the physical buildings, but the way they interact with both themselves, the wider environment, and those members of the public. So thanks for that. And I think we'll have a discussion with you about the reporting back, so thank you, Hugh. In terms of the next item on the agenda, I have item number 6, which is the referral from the SPEDA group, reference the local plan, and that's on item 9 on the agenda. We have the chair of the now renamed Place scrutiny panel. Did you want to say anything, Councillor Crockford-Hawley?
Absolutely not, Chairman. You've got enough to get on with.
Lovely. I just thought I'd ask. Thank you very much. Item 7 is the West of England sub-region. I'm not aware of any items on that agenda. Can I just double check that with the solicitor, please?
Agreed, Chairman. I'm not aware of any either.
Lovely. And item 8 then is the forward plan. And it's the same version as we saw at council last week. It is for noting. I am happy to note unless anybody wants to take a contrary position. Thank you, that's noted then. And now we move on to item number 9, which is the North Somerset local plan. And I'm going to ask Councillor Mark Canniford to present this item. Mark.
Thank you, Don. I've put a note with recommendations in the chat, so I'll say it now as well. I'll be fairly brief. First of all, I'd like to thank James Tompkin for all the work he has put into this, and I have heard superb reports back from parish councils about his engagement, and I think there's no way we can we can't thank him enough for the amount of work that he's clearly done on this. We all of us saw the passion he had in this to try and make it work. And I think he's done a cracking job, so I would like that to be recorded in our minutes if we can do that, please. I think there's just a couple of pieces I want to say. Of course, this is not a statutory stage we're looking at today. It's in the planning process itself, and we're not seeking authority or anything to go to public consultation. This is just a step in the process. Officers require executive to show them the direction we want to go, following all the challenges and the choices. And of course, we've seen the referrals from SPEDA as well, who are happy with the way forward currently and with the work that has been currently done. But of course, everything is up for or subject to further testing and assessment. The intention is to have an agreed draft plan by the autumn with a consultation by the end of 2021. and followed by further stages of public consultation before the submission for testing. I'm not going to go into the details because most people are fully aware of the details because we have all spoken about this on numerous occasions. But I think the one thing I am going to say is, of course, this is really important about our climate change aspirations. And we are looking at this in a very clear way in terms of the processes that we are looking through and working through the steps, which we have all seen. We have been kept up to date all the way through with the 4 ideas of where we should be putting houses and how they should be working. And I think through most of that process now, after looking at all of those plans, the urban focus is clearly standing out. But that is for further discussion. As I say, there's room for further changes. There's room for a lot more discussion. So if I leave it at that, and Don, and I'll come back later if there's any further comments I'd like to pick up.
Thank you. Are there any officer comments on the paper? I don't know if Lucy or any of the team want to say anything. Okay, so Michelle, have you any non-executive members who want to? Oh, sorry, Lucy.
No, I think I just wanted to reiterate what Councillor Canford had said around the sort of amount of engagement that there has been in helping to shape these proposals in this document. And this is an important stage in the process. This isn't, but as Councillor Canford has said, this is not a consultation stage as such, but it is a key stage in the process of progressing the development of the forward plan, and there will be opportunities around consultation on the more detailed iteration of the spatial strategy later in the year.
Thank you. Michelle, are there any non-executive members who wish to speak?
No non-executive members, no.
Okay, we've got some members of the executive who wish to speak. I've seen Councillor Cartman's hand up. Have you got anybody else?
Yes, Councillor Bell and Councillor Petty as well.
Lovely. So I'll go to Councillor Cartman first.
Thank you, Don. I'd like to reiterate my thanks as well to Councillor Tonkin. I know he's been working on this for a long time and been very engaging with people and to officers. But I want to be really clear, this is disappointing because this document is the reality of the government forcing us to build 20,000 homes in North Somerset, of which many, it looks like, will be on the Greenbelt. It's taking us thousands of years to get 100,000 homes, and now we've got to do 20,000 over 15 years, which is the size of 2 Clevedons. And you know, the reality is that 80–90% of that growth is not for local residents and local needs. It's for people moving into the area, whatever you think about that. And the target and the allocation by central government has taken no account of the fact that we've got a lot of greenbelt, a lot of low-lying land, and an area of outstanding natural beauty. It seems to be the result of some mutant algorithm. And do they never learn that those things don't work? I'm going to make a political point here because I have been frustrated by my local MP. I have engaged with him on a local issue to do with this, seeking common cause with him in a non-political way to fight against these numbers. But his response, frankly, has been atrocious. His responses to local residents have been at best disingenuous, at worst misleading. Others would say he simply lied, and perhaps I wouldn't go that far. But we need to make common cause, whereas they or he seems to be lining up to score political points. It's like the government has asked us to fit an elephant in a mini, and now the local MPs are blaming us because the bloody thing doesn't fit, excuse my language. Frankly, they need to stop playing politics with this and start engaging with us to solve the problem of how we incorporate these houses into our area. I don't think we're going to get any help from central government. The only focus on construction in central government at the moment seems to be on the Prime Minister's flat, not about North Somerset. The table at 320 in the document, this is what I'll refer to, I think is simply quite shocking. I was disappointed the document does not make it clear that we will not under any circumstances put 6,000 houses in the Greenbelt, because that's what it implies. And that to me is unacceptable. I think it's also unacceptable to the residents of North Somerset, which I don't think comes out clearly in this document. Of the development approaches detailed in the choices consultation, retain the Greenbelt was the option most strongly supported. Similarly, it was the option with the smallest number of people objecting to it. So people clearly care about this for themselves and for future generations. It is important that we put sustainable thinking and the latest sustainable thinking into the development of the local plan. And I'm absolutely key on that, both environmental, social and economic sustainability. All three are absolutely crucial. But I'm not convinced this document effectively does this. There seems to be an underlying assumption that as long as we get people out of their cars, then everything will be all right. Not only is this naive, it's wrong, dangerously so. We all know the climate change emergency is much more serious than this. And our policy needs to be built on deep thinking, not simple slogans and sound bites. So I think this needs a lot more work. Nonetheless, it has moved forward, although I have serious concerns. And I think I take the thing from Councillor Caniford that, and from Lucy Shmali, that it's not the end game. And point two, and this is really very persuasive for me, we are endorsing this spatial strategy for further testing and assessment. And I hope that the things I've mentioned will be part of that testing and assessment, and that there'll be opportunity for other people to feed into it. I have thought deeply about this paper and whether to support it, but ultimately it's being imposed upon us by central government, and that is the reality of it, and we need to deal with that in a mature and grown-up way. You know, to oppose it would possibly disrupt the process of developing a local plan if supported by colleagues. That's not going to help anyone. No local plan means unsustainable, uncontrolled and speculative development. So I will be prepared to vote for this, but with a heavy heart. And I would ask that we all try and put as much pressure on our MPs to work with us together collaboratively to see if we can bring these numbers down to something that's actually more realistic. I'm not against building houses, we need them, but this is simply ridiculous. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Petty.
Thank you. Like Councillor Cartman, I have some serious concerns, but also some. I also think there are good things in this report that I have read and I have seen in the process to date. However, I still remain concerned. So, although I appreciate comments like development should relate to local needs, what I genuinely worry is that this whole process is not about housing need or local community. It is a government set on growth in housing for profit. For over a decade, we have heard of a housing crisis, but it is not that. It is an affordability crisis. Greens across the country have campaigned for safe, quality homes for all, but these must be a price that people can pay. And sadly, even the word affordable has become an industry jargon and part of council language jargon. This local plan process is not about our community, it is about the government and a sector that has such powerful lobby and so much skin in the game that I fear the climate emergency and nature emergency means nothing to them. For if it did, it would not be asking, where will we build over 20,000 houses? On which fields do they think that we should just give up on them and build 2 cleavers? Because I fear that what they are expecting of our communities is beyond. Is just, you know, so every village, every town is concerned about this. Every town, we have residents everywhere concerned about the climate emergency and the nature emergency. And I have multiple conversations every week asking me, how are you talking about improving the environment or protecting or enhancing our community and rural sense of life? And at the same time, you're planning this many houses. In Banwell, it is listed in the previous joint spatial plan as an infill village, and I welcome that that language is proposed to be removed. However, it is still remaining on there as somewhere that will take significant housing. And so while I support urban development and the development of our towns, the residents of Banwell have stated to me how yet again they are extremely concerned about the infrastructure or lack of and the impact on the roads that currently the public transport is not sufficient to take all the needs, and active travel will not be the answer to every journey at this time and for every part of our communities. And so it is a genuine fear and it is a genuine risk as to what will happen to our road networks when we put that many houses in Nailsea and in Banwell. And really, is that what we can look forward to as a sustainable future? And is that how we address the climate emergency and the needs of our residents? So I welcome the work done by the scrutiny panels, and I welcome the work done by the officers to date. And I appreciate the recognition of the climate emergency, but I do worry that there must be more work done as we continue to consult. And we must, as Councillor Cartman highlighted, continue to lobby central government and through our MPs, because the land is not fit for 20,000 houses, and building houses that are not good quality homes and that put residents at risk of flooding in their futures or other risks is just moving to another crisis, being the health crisis, the mental health crisis that comes with repeated flooding of homes. So thank you for allowing me to talk today and represent the residents of Banwell. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike Bell.
Thanks, Don. I'd like to start by just echoing the comments from Councillor Caniford and Cartman about James Tonkin, who absolutely has done a sterling job in leading the development of the emerging local plan ideas, and in particular was always willing to take on board constructive alternative views, even when they came at the 11th hour. So really appreciate his hard work. I mean, I think it's worth remembering the context of this document. So this isn't our local plan. This is only setting out the broad spatial strategy that we want to develop. But it is an important milestone in the development of the local plan. The government requires every community and council to have a local plan to deliver on housing required. We don't have an option about that. The government decides the rules for it, and it also determines what the housing target is going to be. And we don't have much flexibility for local decision making. The council lobbied government last year to point out how flawed their housing formula is, and critically how it fails to take account of the need for infrastructure and jobs. And that's my biggest criticism about the process. It's one thing to identify housing need, and every government has a responsibility to try and create competition in the housing market and make sure that we've got sufficient homes for the future growth in our population. And goodness knows we've got people on the housing waiting list here in North Somerset who want more homes and more opportunities to buy or rent a home. However, it does need to go hand in hand with infrastructure and with jobs. And unfortunately, time and again, the government is more interested in delivering the housing numbers for its own sake, rather than delivering the investment that's needed to support that housing. And we've only got to look around North Somerset to see loads of evidence of that. Numerous housing developments that we have had over the last 20 or 30 years have come and gone, but the critical infrastructure has lagged behind or not arrived at all. Now, I do support this local plan because we've got to establish a plan, and if we don't, then we will open up our community to speculative developers who absolutely don't have the interests of North Somerset at heart. But I think we do need to keep banging the drum and expecting the government to deliver some investment to help that jobs and infrastructure ask. We need more investment in jobs to reduce out commuting and give opportunities to future generations. We need improved health services, including a bigger, better hospital. We've already got a Western General Hospital that is struggling to cope with the demands of this community, and the same in terms of GP practices and community health services. If we continue to grow, then there needs to be sustained investment in those services. We do need a better infrastructure to support development, and that includes better bus and rail services and some road improvements. It's no good leaving those things lagging behind, but still expecting to deliver tens of thousands of new homes. And we do also need a better mix of homes that will provide the affordable options that local people need. And again, the whole planning system is geared up and designed by government to give all the power to the big house builders and the developers, and none of the power to local communities. That does have to change. And so anybody who is listening to this, please lobby your members of parliament and demand better from them, because if we carry on down this track, we are just storing up problems for the future by adopting plans that which won't be deliverable and which will not offer the infrastructure and jobs that North Somerset needs.
Okay, thank you, Mike. I will not repeat but agree with everything colleagues have said. I believe, Michelle, we have a request for somebody else to speak.
I've got a request from Councillor Bridger, Councillor Gibbons and Councillor Crockford-Hawley.
Okay, so I'll go to Councillor Crockford-Hawley first.
Thank you, Reid. I wonder if I could ask you to change that. As chairman of the scrutiny panel, I'd rather like to hear what all the executive members say before I comment.
Okay, well, I'll go to Councillor Gibbons first then.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to join with colleagues in thanking James Tonkin for all the hard work he's done and for having been such a great colleague for the past 2 years. As others have said, he's been collaborative and helpful and has done a fantastic job in engaging with towns and parishes and done all this work. And I just like to sort of agree with a lot of what's been said. I would say absolutely that we don't so much have a housing crisis per se as an affordability and a crisis, because we have people in Weston-super-Mare, in my ward actually, living in unacceptable accommodation and paying more than 50% of their income for that. And the impact that has on young families, not just on mental health, but on the development of children and on just being able to cope with what is already a difficult situation post-pandemic or approaching a post-pandemic world. And I don't feel that what the government is expecting of us is addressing any of these issues. We're not looking to address inequalities properly through what's being asked of us. We're going to add to the inequalities that exist in our society, and where housing can play a crucial role in addressing inequality and in fact health inequality, because poor housing, inadequate housing has huge knock-on effects on people's physical and mental health. So yes, I agree with all the concerns and caveats that have been expressed so far, and I want to see more from our government to address. They say they want to build back better, I think, isn't that the phrase that's being used? I see no evidence of that in what we are being asked to do here. Thank you.
Apart from at number 10 Downing Street, of course.
Well, quite. I wasn't
improvement
down there.
The furniture. Councillor Bridger.
Thank you, Don. Well, I won't repeat what others have said. You'll be pleased to hear. I'm broadly, very happy actually with this report and our approach, especially the principles I think that underpin the strategy. And I think the wording of the report, a lot of what's in there is really important, because come the time that will be unpicked by our residents, it'll be tested at examination. Probably later in 2022. So I think the words we've got in there, and how we've expressed things is really important. I suppose the crux of the issue is that definition of sustainable development, isn't it? So whilst the government have probably skewed that in favour of purely economic development, and others have said have made it a numbers game, I suppose. I think what we're saying in this document is that we're saying something slightly different. I think we're saying we're mindful of the climate emergency, putting that front and centre. What we care about is creating healthy places and so on. So that's the message I think we need to get out there. I fully support the recommendations of the SPEDA panel, of which I was a member of until last week. While I note the 2 adjustments to that stated in the report, I've got some previous, if you like, when it comes to planning the local plan prior to being elected a councillor. So, I mean, notwithstanding Ash's comments and the remarks of others, I think now we're at the stage where, if they haven't already, I'd really encourage elected members to be proactive, to have the conversations with their communities, with our officers, encourage our communities, I think, to lean into this process. Be part of shaping development in their areas. Development is inevitable, but and I include myself in that. It's incredibly important now that we have those conversations with our communities, so that we don't feel that everything is done to us as communities, that we help shape it. That's really important. So thank you to James as well. Thanks to our officers, I think, for capturing the essence of many of the conversations that we've had as members. I think they've done sterling job, although we're only partway along the on the journey, of course. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, so Councillor Crockford-Hawley.
Thank you, Leader. My job as chairman of the scrutiny panel is now very easy because, quite frankly, I've not heard anything from colleagues on the executive which has not been the subject of conversation in scrutiny. So your joint offer, I'm sorry, is zero. But thank you for it, because by that you are backing up clearly what the scrutiny panel has already suggested. The one person I think who has challenged us is Ash Cartman. And I listened to what he said with great interest, because it does not find his comments do not find favour with the way in which the process is flowing, and that I think is something which we really need to take on board and discuss in depth. But thank you everybody else for simply backing up what scrutiny panel decisions already are, and I thank Ash for further keeping us on our toes. Pray continue that process, Ash. Thank you.
Okay, Michelle, did anybody else wish to speak?
Councillor Solomon, Chairman.
Solomon.
Yeah, I'd remove my hand because all I was going to say is I support everything my colleagues have said. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, we've had a debate on this. We've got comments. We've got recommendations.
So shall I sum up, Don?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, please. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, you're quite right, colleagues. It is frustrating that our MPs simply haven't helped through this process, and what we get is a very disingenuous "it's the council's fault" if houses are built where we don't want them. And I think it's a really important message to send out there. Our officers have also been backed into a corner by the numbers, and they are doing what they can to try and make this work. Our MPs are very silent, and it is them and their party, because we are in an area where they are running the country, who are dumping this level to 20,084 houses on an area which just simply cannot tolerate those figures. There is undoubtedly going to be an unmet amount of houses. Now, as Ash was saying, 6,000 houses on the green belt, but we've only got to look at diagram in 317. The green belt is the very last option. And could it take that amount of houses? Well, I would say Ash Cartman's clearly saying not a chance. And I think that that is a debate that will continually rage on through this process. Officers will have to assess all opportunities, of course they will. But again, they will assess those opportunities, and we will still find out, in my mind, an unmet need. We won't be able to fulfil it. So, but we do have to make sure we go through this process, because in 2023, these house builders we've been talking about, will effectively have carte blanche to build where they want if we don't have a good policy in place to prevent it. So that is really the crux, and this is why we need to see this process moving forward. I want to thank officers, because I know the amount of work that currently has gone into this, and they are being challenged, and we know they're getting challenged. And again, as Councillor Crockford-Hawley said, scrutiny and executive seem to be on the same level with this, which is really helpful. So I hope we all vote for this, including Ash, even though we've recognised his objections to parts of this, and he will continually challenge, I'm sure.
Okay. So I'll recourse my thanks also to James and the members of the scrutiny panels, and also to our officers for getting us to this stage. There's still a lot of work to do. There are 4 recommendations in front of us. I was going to take them en bloc. I look for a proposer. Is that you, Mark?
Yes, proposed.
Mark, do I see a seconder? Councillor Steve Bridger. Do I have any votes against? Do I have any abstentions? Michelle?
Nothing in chat.
Lovely. So I'll take that then that we all unanimously support these papers, even with the comments we made. So thank you, colleagues, and we'll move on to the next item. Thank you very much. So item number 10 is the draft recycling and waste strategy. Now, this is going to be introduced by Councillor Solomon, as it now falls within his portfolio, but I think he may be asking for some help as part of that presentation.
And that's quite correct. Although it's now part of my portfolio, Bridget's done all the hard work so far, and I think it should definitely fall on her to present this if she'd be kind enough to do that. Thank you, Bridget.
Yes, so I'm happy to do that. So until last week, I was working with the waste and recycling team in developing this consultation. So now I'm losing documents in all different places. But what we're proposing here today is just to approve that the draft recycling and waste strategy document goes out for public consultation, and that the executive notes that the consultation content will be agreed by the executive member for waste and recycling alongside officers before launching, because the consultation isn't due to go out until June time. So that will give Mike Solomon plenty of time to get it more involved. But I've enjoyed working with the team around this, and I wanted to just capture this one paragraph in the vision, which I feel like would speak to many councillors and anybody listening, so hopefully many residents. We only have one planet and all waste goes somewhere. So this strategy is about how North Somerset can think about what to do with its rubbish and make the most of this important resource. To be efficient, to repair and reuse and find value instead of discarding. I think many residents will be aware of controversy and conversations around single use, whether it's single use plastic or other single use packaging. And so I welcome this strategy and the concept to go out to consultation. And what the team is going to look at doing is how do we engage some of our young people. We have eco groups at schools. We have community groups who are active in waste, like the plastic-free communities in Weston, Turn the Tide in Portishead, and many others. And sorry for those who I haven't listed, but there is a very active Facebook group, which is, I think, reuse, reduce, recycle. So those kind of groups, but equally every individual, every town and parish council, we'd love to see participate in this consultation. So
okay.
People can recommend to approve.
Thank you. And I would ask that we pass on the details of this to all the supermarkets. You are the main supplier of most of the stuff that goes in our black waste bins through their inability to take plastic out of the supply chain. I was delighted to see that I think Iceland Frozen Foods have made a commitment to be plastic free by 2022 or 2023. And I looked at all the others to be joining them. Right, do we have any questions from the officers first of all, Michelle?
No questions at the moment, Chairman.
And any non-executive members have got any comments?
No comments in chat, no.
Anything from the executive members?
Councillor Gibbons and Councillor Bridger, Chairman.
Okay, well, I'll go to Councillor Gibbons first, then to Councillor Bridger.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I just wanted to say that I welcome this strategy and just reflect on actually how far we've come in the past 4 or 5 years in terms of recognising the importance of reducing the amount of waste we produce. I can remember when I took the motion to Western Town Council to become a plastic-free organisation back in 2017. It tied in, I think, with the Blue Planet documentary, and people's awareness suddenly shot up, and we achieved that status in 8 months, which was down to community work and conversations that some of our activists had with local businesses and schools and other stakeholders. And you know, we can do so much more. I think this strategy will push us to take those next steps. It is so very, very important. So thank everybody who's worked on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve Bridger.
Thanks, Don. Yeah, just very brief comment. With my previous scrutiny hat on, we had a couple of sessions with members. There was really good member engagement on this topic. I think it's referenced in the report, but I note this is another area really where the powers we need to deliver on many of the commitments in the report are incumbent on the government bringing forward the Environment Bill. I think that's in the report, and I think I'm thinking particularly I mean, you touched on this, Don, in your opening remarks, but I'm also thinking of the extended producer responsibility schemes. I mean, we rank really highly, don't we, in terms of recycling? But I think that our success rather lets the online retailers off the hook. And taxpayers effectively have to pick up the tab for that. So, you know, I really hope the government get a move on and bring forward that environment bill by the end of the year. Thanks.
Indeed, yes. They privatise the profit and socialise the waste, don't they? Okay, so are there any other requests to speak, Michelle?
Councillor Bell, Chairman.
Councillor Bell, thank you, Mike.
Sorry, just a quick one. I just wanted to say, and just to underline Steve's comment there, you know, we are the top performers in the region for recycling. And I think it's worth noting that whilst this is an excellent strategy and we are looking to put in place the right kind of measures in the longer term to improve upon that performance in terms of the management of waste and recycling, we should give a huge amount of credit to residents across North Somerset who in the main do absolutely the right things in terms of trying to recycle and trying to dispose of their waste appropriately. You know, best in the region on the most low recent figures and in the top 10 nationally. And our aspiration absolutely should be to get there to #1 in England. And I hope that that's something that this strategy will help us to deliver upon. And it's good news, not just for the environment, but also for people's pockets, because in the end, our waste service costs council taxpayers a lot of money every year. So the more that we can do the right things to encourage businesses to recycle and as individuals to dispose of our waste appropriately, the better it is for the environment and the better it is for our pockets.
Thank you, Mike, and I'd reiterate those thanks to the residents of North Somerset for their participation. The levels are brilliantly high. We need to be even higher. We need to be #1. I'd also like to thank the team within the council and our contractors for the work they do in terms of collecting that recycling and processing it in a very efficient way. So thank you all. It's a good news story, but I want us to be even better. I want us to be #1 in the whole of the country, and that's down to a joint effort. So thank you for that. We have this is a consultation piece. The recommendations are to approve the draft recycling and waste strategy document for public consultation, and the executive notes the consultation content will be agreed by the executive member for waste alongside officers before launching. So we have those there. Do I have a proposer? Do I see Mike Solomon proposing? I see Councillor Bridget Petty seconding. Do I have any votes against? Do I have any abstentions? Michelle?
Nothing in chat, Chairman.
Lovely. So that's unanimously approved. So thank you, colleagues. And we move on to the next item. I flick onto my next screen, which is item 11, the proposal to expand Ravenswood Special School Nailsea, which is for Councillor Catherine Gibbons to present.
Thank you. Yes, as you'll see from the report, I'm here actually to ask the executive's approval to expand Ravenswood Special School in Nailsea from a range of 112 to 119 places to 134 to 140 places. I don't think it can be something that's escaped anybody's notice that we have an increasing demand for places with special educational needs pupils in North Somerset. And we as an authority have a vision where we want to give that extra help and support to overcome any problems these children have that others don't face. It is an obligation that we allow our children to reach their full potential. In North Somerset, we work together, I'd hope, to support all children and young people with additional needs. So this is part and parcel of our strategy and our vision to allow this school to expand and offer more places. And I think it's particularly timely because we are still, I believe, in National Autism Month or World Autism Month, and we have just actually had Autism Awareness Week in the UK. So this is a school that does fantastic work with children who have autistic spectrum disorders. If you call it a disorder, a lot of people will just say it's a different way of seeing the world. However, that's a different other matter. And it deals with speech, language, communication and moderate learning difficulties. So the reason that I've brought it's coming to the executive is that in this case, it's the executive that is the decision maker, as the school's admission code doesn't actually apply to special schools. The local authority can propose an expansion following a statutory process, and in accordance, it's in accordance with North Somerset's education commissioning strategy, as is outlined in the report in section 2.5. This legislation requires that the matter comes to us as the decision maker within a 2-month period of the end of the consultation period. And you'll have seen in the report that there was an extensive consultation that took place between the 20th of November and the 18th of December last year. I don't know if you've had a chance to read some of the comments, but overwhelmingly the reaction was positive to the expansion of this school. It's great to see the comments of welcoming extra pupils and appreciating the value of this school to the community. In addition, it's been to the Children and Young People Scrutiny Panel, who approved the consultation back in October, and in a couple of updates subsequently, the last one being on the 19th of January, they are fully supportive of the expansion, as of course is the governing body of Ravenswood School. There's quite a detailed analysis of how it will be financed in sections 5, which I won't go through in detail, as I'm absolutely sure colleagues have read them carefully. What I will say is I hope that my colleagues will approve this, because we've been talking about the number of houses that are going to be built in North Somerset, and we're talking about expansion of our area. This isn't going to mean that we're going to have less pupils needing this facility. We're always going to have more, for a number of complex reasons, one of which is much better recognition of these educational needs. I think many of us who are a certain age can think back to a time when children who were on the autistic spectrum, let's say, didn't get recognised and didn't get the help they needed in time. And we don't want anybody to fall into that trap, as it were. We want to have adequate spaces, and this will go a long way to doing that. So I'm looking for approval from colleagues. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Do we have any comments from officers?
No comments at the moment, Chairman.
Any comments from non-executive members, Michelle?
None at the moment.
Okay, any comments from executive members?
Yes, Councillor Petty would like to comment.
Councillor Petty.
Hi, thank you. I welcome this report and all the effort and the work.
You're incredibly quiet, Bridget, which is unlike you.
Very unlikely, and I haven't changed anything.
I know. You're still quite quiet.
Okay, let's go loud. Can you hear me okay now?
Sort of. Better than before.
Okay, sorry. I welcome the report and the work done and the consultation done. And all the effort made by the officers. I hope it's okay to ask a few questions. One question and one request. One question was, in filling these additional places, would these be children who are currently having to go outside of district for their educational needs, or are they in other schools but with less suitable provision? Was one question. And then the second one was just that should there be capital improvements made, because I can see there is a small grant available, and looking at how to make the Voyage Learning Campus appropriate, can we just ensure that if we're making physical improvements to any sites and properties, then we consider the energy efficiency and, you know, potentially ask about improving lighting and things like that, so that we keep the costs of energy bills low and also make savings in our carbon emissions. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just come back on that. Yes, on the point about whether the children that will be using it will be coming from those who've been sent out of area, that could very well be possible, but equally having additional places for people closer to Nailsea means that there's going to be less travelling. I think we've actually, as in everything, been very mindful of the climate emergency, and that's one of the key reasons that we want to make sure that there are adequate places as near to where people live as possible. We've a long way to go, but this is a step toward it. And yes, I absolutely take on board the desire to make sure that any building work that goes ahead is done in as sustainable manner as possible. So when the time comes, we can have a conversation about that, hopefully.
Okay, so I think that's all the requests to speak. So do I take it, Catherine, you're going to propose this? Okay, and do I see a seconder? See Councillor Petty. So we're asked to recommend the approval of the expansion as laid out in the papers.
Yep.
So do we have any votes against? Do we have any abstentions?
No.
Okay, so that's unanimously approved. Thank you, colleagues. And now we move on to the next item on the agenda, which I believe is Mark Caniford, which is the Mark Caniford now taking over the North Somerset Parking Standards SPD for public consultation. Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Don. Yes, so parking again, Don. So this should get some juices going again. The parking standards SPD.
Not. It's a consultation.
It is. So I'm going to first of all just make a couple of brief comments and then look for any others. There's something I've seen and I've been quite keen on for quite a long time is the 100% provision of electric charging in new homes, and this SPD is going to make sure that is something which we are going to start seeing quite clearly. If we are looking at a society that is going to move to electric cars, EV cars, in the future, if we don't provide the ability to charge those vehicles, no one's going to move across to that type of transport. So that is a really good part of this, and I'm really pleased to see. Of course, what is going to cause the discussions, which certainly we hope, isn't it, is the parking needs assessment. And just briefly, I'm sure we're all aware of what this is about. This is about providing the amount of spaces that are needed and not the amount of spaces that we perceive are needed. And quite clearly, it is important for anyone getting involved, whether that be councillors, agents, developers, members of the public, to understand what those rules are and how those rules work. And I think that is a welcome change to how we've currently been doing this. And of course, the assessment will be based on all sorts of things. It will be based on how close you are to transport hubs, next to railway stations, middle of town centres, all of the things which affect ownership of cars. So we won't just be making a carte blanche decision to, it's got to be this many spaces per flat, and that's what we're consulting about. If those sort of ideas make sense, and we need to go out there. Of course, there'll be developers who would like to see no spaces provided for car parking because they can build more houses. And of course, we'll see some people who will want as many car parking spaces as they can get because they don't want to accept the change in our society and the way things are going. So this is why I look for support on this today. I do feel that this is a really good move forward. We're going to public consultation with this. So this is simply that stage, but I think we have got this pretty good at present, but you know, any improvements would be welcome. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so I've got, I'll ask, are there any officer comments first of all?
Nothing in chat, Chairman.
Okay, are there any non-exec members who wish to make comments? And please bear in mind this is a consultation. We aren't deciding the matter tonight.
We've just got Councillor Solomon and Councillor Bell. No. Okay,
so I'll go to Mike Solomon first.
Yes, thanks, Mark. Just a point of clarification, having a hybrid car myself, it's quite possible to plug your car into a standard 3-pin socket overnight and charge it. You need a space obviously outside the house, but you don't need a charging point. Thanks.
What we're going to do with all the batteries though, Mike, because we can't reprocess them.
Yes, you're right, Don. Good point.
Mike Bell.
Thanks, Don. I take on board the steer that this is a consultation, and I guess my plea would be for residents and members to respond and businesses to respond to the consultation, because I'm not sure whether the proposed parking needs assessment is the right approach. My concern about it is that discounting the parking space requirement for residential developments based on the proximity of public transport is certainly one way of doing it, but of course it doesn't necessarily mean that the public transport because it happens to be nearby, is appropriate and suitable for the people who will live in that accommodation. And I think that's my concern, really, because representing as I do Weston-super-Mare Town Centre, an area where we're often told when planning applications come along that there's no requirement for parking provision because there's good public transport access and there are lots of local jobs that people can do in the town centre. Well, both of those are true statements, but of course it flies in the face of the reality of what people actually do. And unfortunately, a lot of people choose to live in the town centre because of what it offers in terms of lifestyle and accommodation options, but still work somewhere else. And therefore, they do rely on the private car and hopefully in future an electric vehicle. So my feeling is that I would still like us to be stronger in terms of reflecting the realities and the various geographic conditions that we see around North Somerset. So I recognise that the parking needs assessment approach certainly goes some way to trying to better reflect the variety that's out there across our community. I am concerned that particularly in some of the town centre areas where there will be adjacency benefits in terms of public transport, that is not the same as having public transport that is suitable for the needs of most commuters. So I would strongly encourage people to respond and have their say so that we can try and get to the best possible policy for the long term.
Okay, though of course the contrary point might be, going back to the previous item on the planning, that for every square inch we give out to parking boxes, we're then having to go farther into green spaces to build houses. So people might want to respond to the fact that better public transport, better coordination may actually reduce the amount of requirement of greenfield sites to be used. But that would be controversial, of course. Okay, are there any other comments, Michelle?
No other comments in chat.
Okay, well, do we have a proposed? Do I have Mark Caniford, you proposing that?
Yeah, I propose this consultation, and just to be sure what we're talking about with the assessment, it is about firming up the current process as well, where currently officers can be making different judgments in the area. This would make that a much firmer process, but Councillor Bell's quite right. We've got to make sure all the things that go around that really do work, whether that is public transport or whatever it may be, and that's really important. So yes, I propose this to go to consultation.
Okay. Do I see a seconder? Councillor Gibbons. Okay, thank you. Do I see any votes against? Or any abstentions? Michelle?
Nothing in chat, Chairman.
Lovely, thank you. So that's unanimously approved, colleagues. So thank you very much for that. Thank you for that endorsement, and we'll look forward to the outcomes of the consultation. Thank you very much. Now we move on to item number 13, which Steve Bridger will be introducing now as it comes from his portfolio, which is an update on the HIF Banwell bypass application. Steve Bridger.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this one's down to me. So colleagues will recall that the successful Housing Infrastructure Fund bid, of which the delivery of the Banwell bypass is a part, is one of a number of major projects actually that the council sees, I think, as crucial to the economic recovery of the district. The core objectives of the HIF programme are highlighted in the report, paragraph 3.4 in the report. I think basically we're at a stage where we basically need to gather as much information as possible about the land within the potential route alignments of the bypass. So the 5 recommendations are set out in the report, but I just wanted, I think, to spend a couple of minutes, Chair, just explaining what they all mean and what the executive is being asked to authorise today. So the report is not about signing off the route or the design of the scheme. I think it's important to stress that, but the first thing we're being asked to do is authorise the necessary investigations and formal land referencing. That's the first thing. So essentially, that's the process of identifying the people and organisations that own the land or have a legal interest in the land or property within the area of development being considered for the bypass. So in order to identify landowners with interests through that investigation work, that might mean We might have to issue some requisitions for information under the Acquisition of Land Act or the Highways Act. I think it's worth noting that this process, I think, will also inform the documentation, the sort of statutory documentation that as a council will need to support, bring forward to support planning application in due course. So it's very important stage of the process. We're also being asked, I think, as an exec, to authorise that formal negotiations with landowners can formally begin, leading to the eventual acquisition of land or rights, hopefully by agreement. Being realistic, I think, given the extent of the land required to deliver the bypass, I mean, I think it's important to say that if negotiations fail and we can't secure the land by agreement, it may be necessary to acquire the land by compulsory purchase in order to meet the requirements of the grant agreement we have with Homes England, and particularly the timings, the deadlines in that agreement that was signed last August, I think. Remember, we need to deliver a Banwell bypass by March 2024. It's an incredibly tight timescale we're working to. Experience tells us, I think, that whilst we're having those voluntary negotiations with landowners, it's always best to twin track the process. And in fact, I think it's the government would recommend that we do that we promote at the same time as having those conversations, compulsory purchase order. We do that in parallel to those negotiations. So whilst securing the land by voluntary agreement will always be preferable, we need to have a plan B. Now, I should say at this point, I think that a decision, should we need a CPO decision to use a CPO or not, will be subject to a specific resolution to full council. I think members will see that appearing on the forward plan, or next iteration of the forward plan. So alongside the work that officers will be doing to find out who owns what and where, and to start those conversations, we are being asked as an exec to authorise the preparation of to start the CPO process, basically leading to a subsequent report to full council, I think, to determine use of our compulsory purchase powers to acquire the land and rights should we need to do that. So I think the contract between the council and Homes England require us to have acquired all the land we need to deliver the bypass by December 2022. So just to repeat, we're being asked to do three things, colleagues, as an executive. The first thing is to authorise the necessary investigations and that land referencing piece of work. We're being asked to authorise that formal negotiations can start with landowners. And finally, we're being asked to give our authority for officers to prepare the CPO process should we need that later on. So I think finally I'd just like to thank the officer teams. That's Jonathan Perisol-Neris, Alex Fear, Lucy Shamali, of course, Sam Byers. I'm sure there's some others I've forgotten to mention or haven't yet met actually in this role, but I'd like to thank them for bringing this forward, and I'd like to propose acceptance of this report. Don.
Thank you, Steve. Well, you've asked for a proposal. We have a seconder for it as you're at this stage. Okay, Councillor Mike Bell is seconding. Okay, let's go out to questions. First, are there any officer comments required?
No officer comments.
Okay, fine. Any non-exec member comments, Michelle?
No non-exec members either.
And executive members?
Yes, we've got Councillor Bell, Councillor Petty, and Councillor.
Okay. I noticed Councillor Haverson had her hand up. Should I go to her first? Karen Haverson, did you want to speak?
Yes, yes, thank you. Sorry, I was a bit slow with my hand. Yes, I mean, I totally second the proposal. I just wanted to cast my eyes a bit further into the future and see this whole project of the Banwell bypass as a network, not just the Banwell bypass. it's obviously clearly going to have an impact on several villages in the surrounding areas. And I'm very, very concerned that that is taken on board early in the planning, that the impact on the villages downstream, especially Sanford and Churchill, is taken into account, and that we use this opportunity to actually link it into a network of sustainable travel opportunities, as well as a bypass around the Banwell village. I think it's really important to include plans for those other villages in the initial planning. So it's an opportunity as well as a challenge. That's how I see it. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I completely endorse your point around the use of that space for active travel and indeed public transport. So thank you for raising those points. I've got Mike Bell.
No, you're okay. Thank you, Chairman. Okay,
I've got Bridget Petty.
I was interested to know more about the procedural process. And I hope you don't mind me asking, Steve, but you're welcome to call in officers if they could answer it accordingly. I was wondering whether the negotiations that take place, is this something done by part of that project team, or whether that's a specific set of kind of skills and consultants, whether elected members are involved, and also whether the process of raising a CPO at the same time can be seen as negative when negotiating with somebody over whether they would like to sell their land, whether it feels like a heavy threat.
Shall I come back on those points, Tom?
Yes, please, Steve.
Yeah, I think that obviously whilst the formal negotiations will start, I think we've had officers on site and representatives since I think last summer conducting ecological surveys and things. I'm pretty sure that we are already building up a pretty good picture of where the sentiment lies. There'll be, I think, those people who are probably pretty eager to sell, others willing to negotiate, and there may be some who are who will flatly refuse, frankly, and we might hence the CPO process. We're working with some consultants, a law firm, and some surveyors. That's my understanding, to do this work, as well as obviously the work that officers will do themselves. I don't think that we'll be involved in that process as elected members. I wouldn't want to be involved in that process. What was your?
We should be, Steve. Probably. I think we'll say we aren't involved quite categorically.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
for us to be involved.
There's obviously, as a council, we'll be bringing forward a planning application in due course. So there's a separation here between the council bringing this forward to bring forward the bypass and the subsequent planning process, which will be obviously be entirely separate. But as Karen was saying, that's some way down the track, I think. The report today is purely to authorise the kick-off, really, for these sort of delicate process of negotiations with landowners along the routes. I'm picking up on Karen's point, Councillor Haverson's point. I mean, I absolutely endorse everything she says. I mean, there are some real opportunities, I think, with this, and I reflect as well on, I think, the motion that Councillor Keating brought to Council last week, where we I think asking us to basically explore the scope for any smaller scale sort of transport interventions that we might be able to deliver to the local road network. I mean, absolutely no promises, but you know, that's definitely something that's within the scope of the HIF grant, I think. So, and there will be, of course, substantial public engagement, you know, along each stage of the scheme, particularly the slightly separate from this process with landowners. But in terms of once we come forward with a design of the scheme, there'll be a lot of engagement around that. So, having said that, whilst we need to consult widely, you know, that and I think it's important I say this, we do need to deliver the bypass by March 2024, so we also need to be mindful of that. So consult widely, yes, but not to the extent that it's and listen. But we need to ensure that, I guess it's partly my job to ensure that doesn't break progress, because there will be consequences should that bypass not be delivered by March 2024. But in delivering it, we absolutely need to be mindful of all the things that the communities in that part of the district would want from such a scheme. So, yeah.
Okay. Ash Cartman.
Thank you, Don. I'd like some reassurance, please, from Councillor Bridger, if that's possible. I know this is new, Steve, but there's 8 core objectives for the HIF programme listed in the document, and 2 of them are to be innovative and efficient in reducing and offsetting carbon, and to provide opportunity to increase biodiversity net gain. Can you reassure me that you will make sure these have equal, if not greater, priority to, I think the danger is we get so focused on delivery dates, timescales, public consultation, and I think we've got a real opportunity here to push on this. And given we've issued a climate emergency, I think it's important they get the requisite attention. Are you happy to reassure me they will?
Through you, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to reassure you, Ash. I mean, you're right. I'm having to pick this up pretty quickly. Since last week, I've had some good conversations so far with officers. I know that the land acquisition process that we're talking about isn't just for the scheme itself. It's for associated sort of environmental improvement and mitigation. That includes flood compensation as well. On the specific carbon point, I don't have that info. I'm sure I've seen it in documents that I've read in the last week. I don't know whether Jonathan Perelson-Ellis or Lucy, and I don't think Alex Fear's here today, but I don't know whether an officer could respond to Councillor Cartman on the specific point about being mindful of the climate emergency.
I've got Jonathan's raised his hand just to speak, please, Jonathan.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak, Councillor Bridger. Yeah, absolutely. Those are 2 of the core objectives of the delivery of the Banwell bypass. So absolutely, there's a commitment of a minimum of 10% increase in biodiversity net gain as a consequence of the implementation. We've already started talking to environmental groups to start that dialogue, and therefore look to gain consensus in terms of how we can deliver that. Likewise, we've reached a milestone really in the last couple of weeks where we've just appointed the design and build contractor. So Alan Griffiths is the selected contractor for that, and as part of their process of them winning the procurement process was some very innovative and high aspirations and commitments to sustainability, which you could see as a bit of an oxymoron in terms of building a new road scheme, but active and sustainable travel is at the core of this. It is about facilitating aspects such as public transport, cycle routes, the ability for negating road travel to some respects for communities, Churchill schools, etc. So we've got a real opportunity, and the team are committed to delivering on those 2 aspects as well as the other objectives.
Okay. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Steve.
Are there any other requests to speak, Michelle?
No other requests to speak.
Okay. Well, this has been proposed and seconded already, so I'll go straight to the vote. Are there any votes against the recommendations? 5 recommendations which I'm taking on block.
Nothing in chat, Chairman.
Nothing. Any abstentions?
Nothing again.
Okay, so that's unanimously passed. Thank you, colleagues. And we now move on to item 14, which is Councillor Cartman, the budget monitor.
Thank you, Don. I'm not intending to dwell on this too long. We spent a long time talking about budgets back in February, both for the last year and the current year. I think this is a bit more of the same. The overarching message is strong control, early action and government support, helped us through last year and continue to help us with a really great team. And I do want to pay tribute again to the team. I'm very lucky in my portfolio. I've got a really talented team. I know all members have, of course, but you know, it
even more talented. Is that what you're trying to say?
Even more talented, right? Is what I should say.
We'll expect that with the cream of the executive as well leading it. That we're all fixed together, wouldn't we?
It's fixing together perfectly. It's the engine room of the council.
I understand. Well, we all know that.
But yeah, and also about even if you're not a financial officer, but I mean, it takes a collective effort. So I think that does need to be noted. We are closing the accounts. When I say we, that's the royal we, and so we expect to end up materially within the forecast in this budget. So even though there's a number of uncertainties and assumptions there, and I will ask Mel Watts, who's our acting Section 151 officer, in a moment to add any comments that she would like to with regard to that. I just don't want people to feel complacent because such a good job's been done. We do face a number of uncertainties and risks going forward. I think they're broadly in two camps. I think you've got the COVID camp, and of course that is largely unpredictable and we don't know what's going to happen, but we're obviously on that. And the second one really relates to the funding of local government by central government. Now, I know I had a bit of a dig earlier on the local plan, so I'm going to be balanced now. I think there have been good aspects in terms of the government support over the last year in terms of the money. I think it's been a little bit chaotic and late sometimes, but I think we can forgive that given what's happened. But my worry here is that what's been good over the last year will cease, and we will go back to the old ways of penny pinching, central control, and autocratic austerity. And I hope that's not the case, because we've got things like adult social care funding, fair funding review, 3-year settlement, and all the rest of it. So please, I would, support this, obviously, this report, and ask you to note the projected revenue capital budget forecasts and to approve the capital and revenue amendments, and just really note that we're not out of the woods yet. Thank you. Don, if it's okay with you, I'd like to just see if Mel Watts would like to add anything or not, if that's the case.
Is that from the A team?
That's from the A team, yeah.
Mel, welcome.
Thank you, Chairman.
The proverbial red carpet is unfurled for you.
I would just like to build on a couple of Councillor Cartman's comments. So I think that this is a very much a holding position, but our early indications of accounts closure show that the forecasts are largely on target and we are likely to come in on budget. That being said, we do recognise the fluidity and the impacts of COVID-19, and we know that it's not going to recognise the end of our financial year end, and so we will look to try and smooth some of our COVID grant funding across the year end positions that actually it helps us into the new financial year as we go. I would also like to pick up a couple of points about some of the variances and the non-COVID variances that are actually contained and described within the report, and actually provide some assurances to members that we have addressed a lot of these during the MTFP when we set the budget back in February. So we have put in additional money for things like disabled children's contracts, the home to schools transport, some of those ongoing legacy issues. So hopefully we've got a fairly stable position going forward. But like Councillor Cartman did allude to, we have actually, although we're talking in this very much report about the 2021 financial year, we're already talking again about the 21-22, but our mind is very much on that longer term position and looking ahead towards the spending review and see how we can become engaged in that dialogue and that process, particularly with MHCLG, who's our lead in, but other central government bodies as well. And we're beginning to open dialogues for that, and we'll bring some later updates in future reports for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mel. Right, I'm going to express my thanks to Mel and the team, and I'm also going to express my thanks to all of the council officers, indeed our contractors, because it's taken us an absolutely Herculean effort to get where we are in terms of balancing this budget this year in an extremely difficult and extremely fluid situation. And we do all take your warning about the future being so uncertain, Ash. So thank you for that. But please, I think we need to thank all of us, both our staff and our contractors, for the work they've done to try and get this to where we are financially, bearing in mind how some other councils have been less successful in that area. So are there any questions, any comments from officers other than Mel, Michelle?
No comments in chat, Chairman.
Okay, nothing from no. Okay, so no members wishing to speak either.
No members wishing to speak.
Lovely.
No.
Well, the recommendation is in 3 parts, and there's a part for noting and then 2 for approval. I'm going to take them on block. I need a proposer first of all. Is that you, Councillor Cartman?
Please.
Do I see a seconder? Which is Councillor Canniford. So are there any votes against these 3 recommendations?
No.
Or any abstentions?
Nothing again, Chairman.
Lovely. So those are unanimously approved. So thank you all, colleagues. And we'll now move on to the next item, which is item 15, which is the executive appointments and outside bodies. Now, the skill of management is delegation, of course. So I'm going to delegate this to both Nick Brain, our solicitor, and to Mike Bell.
Chairman,
I can come in if that's helpful. So I think there are only a few small changes from the list that were circulated with the agenda papers, and Nick can correct me if I've misunderstood this. So we've got a vacancy for the Bristol Water Challenge panel, and at the moment we don't have a nomination for that. So my suggestion is that Don and I, as chair and vice chair of executive, agree a nomination at a later date. Hinkley Point stakeholder group, where Councillor Richardson will be replacing Councillor McQuillan. And on the North Somerset Levels Internal Drainage Board, Councillor Havison is replacing Councillor Petty, and Councillor Gibbons is replacing Councillor Cronley. And otherwise, all the nominations remain as per the list circulated with the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Did you want to add anything to that, Nick?
No, being from the B team, Chairman, I couldn't have done any better than the executive member.
I think that those recommendations were all the cream. Everybody is the cream. Councillor Cartman was completely out of order with that statement, trying to impress that we treated any team differently. And Mark Canniford, you're not going to put a vote in for your team being more important now, are you?
Well, don't have to. We all know we are. However, just one, Mike, just wanted to pick up, and just for clarification, the Mendip Hills area of outstanding natural beauty is the executive member for planning and highways or transport. Now those two have been separated. I assume it will be transport.
I think it's because there's a toss of a coin will be made.
We'll sort it out between us then. One of us then.
Yes. I think it'd be a paid for mud wrestling is to win.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Remake that.
But that's a good point, but I think that's likely to fall to Councillor Solomon, I'm afraid.
Okay.
Mud wrestling at the Marine Lake, Don, if
as an area of outstanding natural beauty yourself, it seems absolutely perfect that you take on that role.
Excellent.
Lovely. Okay, so with that clarification, we've been asked to make a decision here, aren't we? Would we approve the appointments with the exception of the Bristol Water Challenge? Do I see a proposer? Can I ask Mike Bell to propose that?
Yes, happy to, Chair.
Thank you. As a seconder, Councillor Petty, thank you. Do I see? Oh, sorry. Forgive me, Michelle. Were there any questions or comments?
Oh, no questions or comments.
No. Okay. So are there any votes against?
Nothing in chat.
Are there any abstentions?
Nothing again, Chairman.
Okay. Thank you. That's unanimously approved. Then, colleagues, we now move on to the next item, which I'm not quick enough to do, which is the contracts award over £250,000. It's an information report. I think we have a legal obligation to make this report, and I understand that Mel Watts, our head of finance, is going to present this. Can I go over to you, please, Mel?
Thank you, Chairman. This is a very brief report, and it aligns to Council's standing orders, whereby we do a retrospective information report to you to advise you of any contracts that have been agreed in the last financial year between £250,000 and £5 million. And during the year, there were 10 contracts awarded within this threshold, with a total value of just over £11.5 million. I'm happy to take any questions away on any of those contracts. I don't have all of the answers with me today, but if anybody would like to ask anything, I'll provide a written response afterwards.
Lovely. This is for information purposes only. So are there any questions or any officer comments?
Nothing in chat, Chairman.
Okay. Are there any non-executive member comments?
Nothing again, Chairman. In chat.
Okay. Are there any of my executive colleagues wishing to ask any questions?
None again, Chairman. No.
Okay, that piece is for information only, so we note it. We thank you, Mel. Thank you, the team, for producing that report. And we now move on to item 17, which is the executive member oral report. Now, at the last council meeting, it went on rather longer than we were anticipating, and Councillor Petty was unable to present a couple of pieces of information. So I'm going to ask her to go to those first, if she does wish to update us on the piece of information on Hinckley licence and NSEC.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Chairman. I was keen to make all councillors and the public aware of the process which was taking place with regards to Hinckley Point C nuclear power station, who had put in a marine licence application to transport silt and to dispose of silt at a site off Portishead. So the process that takes place is that they create conveniently. I believe that Nick Brown has put this up on the thing, on the slides. So the Marine Management Organisation oversees the licences that affect work around the coast, the English coast. And so the applicant had put in an application to deposit silt in this location off Hinckley, off Portishead. As a authority, we raised concerns about this. So the third point down points out that the work that Hinckley need to do in the building of their nuclear plant is some building work on the seabed, and that would result in the need to dispose of 280,000 metres squared of silt. The EDF had initially been using Cardiff grounds, and now they are looking to do an application both to the Cardiff grounds and to the Portishead one. And they had also submitted that application about the Cardiff site. So if we carry on to the next slide. North Somerset Council discussed this and also discussed it with Portishead Town Council, and I'm also a member of a body called Devon and Severn Inshore Fisheries and Conservation Authority, and they also discussed how that might impact, that this application might pose impact in conservation and the potential harm to the nearby town economics and the promotion of hospitality in the area. So we as the council decided to submit an application to say that we do not support this application, and highlighted on here is a number of reasons that we felt it was appropriate to oppose this application. One of the key points I think is fair is that right at the bottom it says the only evidence to date had been provided by the applicant, and there was cause to question whether there should be further scientific evidence provided by additional parties. So we have, and I can continue on to the next slide. Waiting for. And so we have submitted this this opposition to the application to the MMO, and we have also proposed that we have submitted a request for a public inquiry. This is something that the local planning authority can do, and the inquiry would enable a full and independent evaluation of the issues. We believe that this is the appropriate representation of residents of North Somerset, and if we were successful, if the call for a public inquiry is successful, then there may be the need for North Somerset to appoint technical specialists. But it was recognised that at this time, North Somerset Council does not employ, as expected, technical experts in the impact of silt dumping off the coast of North Somerset in proximity to Portishead. If unsuccessful, our combined objections will encourage the MMO to investigate the application more thoroughly. And so that kind of well, okay, let's stay there because I believe that somebody has put their hand up, and then the subsequent slide was me preparing some feedback on another subject, being the waste contract to date.
Okay, so I think I've seen Nicola Holland and then Mike Solomon. Nicola?
Thank you, Don. I would like to thank Councillor Petty. Bridget, thank you very much on behalf of Portishead for the request to set up the public inquiry, request for the public inquiry. I have been assured on a personal level that everything is going to be fine, but it would be absolutely requisite that we are able to assure the residents of Portishead that it is fine with evidence provided, as you say, by somebody other than the applicant. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mike Solomon.
Yes, I've seen all the assurances, and I remember seeing this when it first popped up its ugly head, and reacting to it, the fact that all this stuff will be coming out of the to dig the various tunnels. What I worry about is not the evidence that will be brought forward, is the perception. It's the perception of our residents if stuff washes up on our beaches that are from Hinckley. It's not evidence, it's a perception. And people will have that, no matter what we say. If this does wash up on our beaches, they will perceive it as dangerous, no matter what we say.
Okay. I've got John Cater, I believe, wishes to speak as well.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I just want to say that it's something which concerns me greatly as well, and I welcome an inquiry, and I welcome a fully independent inquiry without any bias being brought into who actually carries out that inquiry. I wouldn't like it to be seen to be done by members who have vested interest in any way, shape or form.
No, I agree with you, John. I mean, I think the correspondence I saw today from our MP, that basically we've been reassured by EDF this is all fine, this is the only place it can go, does seem to me to be marking their own homework, and and I'm sure that our own residents are quite concerned about this. I mean, if the independent examination shows there is no cause for concern, I think that's slightly different. But at the moment, we seem to be getting the applicant saying it's fine and we shouldn't worry. Okay, are there any other questions, Michelle, that I've missed?
No other questions.
Okay, now Bridget, you're going to just do one little more slide, aren't you? I think.
Yeah, and just to kind of come back on some of the comments, Mike Solomon, absolutely agree. It is both perception and the need for robust evidence, and likewise agreeing with John Cato that one wants unbiased and quality evidence with which to make decisions. And there just remained a number of questions as to why other sites that were physically closer to the Hinckley point, the Hinckley building work, are not being considered. So there remained questions that needed answering. We have been offered by a contact group around the subject whether they would like, whether we would have an interest in holding an event and a information session for councillors, and I expect to have more information on that in the coming weeks, and we'll come back to you with some information when we could have an event to have more information provided. So if I wrap that up and move forward to, so people will be aware that until recently I had the portfolio for waste and recycling, and at the end of March, the contract with Biffa was terminated and the establishment of the new wholly owned council company, North Somerset Environment Company, was established. I'm delighted to say that in this past month, we have seen the mobilisation took place smoothly, on time and below budget. So that was a smooth and seamless transition with no impact to residents. The operations to date have been reliable service delivery being achieved, which is one of the key reasons that we did make as a full council vote to make a change, because when as an administration we came in 2019, the service and the rates of missed collections really were not good enough, despite the fact that Biffa has done a good job through the COVID year. So as listed in some of these bullets, I won't go through all of them, but the operations service has been successful with the number of technical things needing to be linked up. HR, they are working hard towards becoming a local employer of choice. This, I believe, is important to many of the councillors, and one of the reasons that we took the decision to establish this wholly owned company. And I'm aware that some of the staff who had been on agency have been brought into employment. The health and safety has been at the forefront of everything they do, and we have seen external appointed consultants to ensure that the health and safety audit is done to the highest standard. And finance has seen smooth transition executed, with over 140 suppliers successfully transitioned to NSEC on new contracts and credit accounts set up and active. So I did want to just highlight it's been a lot of work. the recycling and waste team have heavily been involved, but also the recruitment of the new MD of the company have all been working tirelessly, as well as members in the finance team, legal team, and many others that I apologise, HR. So thank you for everybody who has worked exceptionally hard, and I think we'll all look forward to continuing quality service for all of our residents and with the high standards, and we'll expect updates in the future.
Thank you, Bridget.
Thank you.
And can I just point out for the benefit of everybody here that it was only by exception that Bridget did the presentation by slides today, because that was held over from last Tuesday. So my expectation is not that all executive colleagues will come up with the slide set at this section in future, which I'm sure will be supported by not only them, but also all those watching. So I'll quickly go around the room, as it were, for any further oral updates. Not all councillors will give an oral update for those watching, only when they consider that they have information in part of the importance of this meeting. Okay, I'll go first of all to Steve Bridger.
I have a PowerPoint presentation. No, I don't.
Good. Good.
I've just spending the first week getting to grips, obviously, with a new portfolio and enjoying having lots of conversations with our fantastic A and B team and C team and so on. So
welcome. Thank you. And yes, they're all A's. I think the expression is, Steve. There's no difference. They're all wonderful. Mark Hannaford.
Nothing from me, Don.
No, thank you. Ash Cartman.
Just like to say, every team's created equal. That's fine. Just some are more equal than others, I think is the way to put it. But nothing else from me.
Okay, Catherine Gibbons.
I just only like to say publicly to welcome Nicola Holland as the Assistant Executive Member to the team on Children's Services, and that we look forward to working together. It's going to be very, very productive. And I'd just like to make a comment, if you don't mind, that's kind of completely off my subject, but it's very much in my mind, because I attended a meeting last night in my capacity as a town councillor with members of the Black and minority ethnic group communities in Weston-super-Mare. And I just want to say that our thoughts are really very much with those community members we have across North Somerset who have family and connections in India, and to sort of feel, I don't know how we can support them, but just to have a think as a council as to how we can support those people in this time of worry. And to reinforce, and I'm sure Councillor Bell, whose portfolio this is, will see and agree with me, that we're seeing that we really are not safe until everybody's safe. And to just bear in mind that we may have people in our communities, in our villages, who are facing a lot of worry with relatives out there and seeing this catastrophe unfold. So just that. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. I'm sure that our thoughts are with all those people, within our communities who have relatives, family and friends in India, and indeed in other countries which are suffering greatly from COVID, because sadly it is a worldwide issue, and an awful lot of countries are losing an awful lot of their own people. So thanks for raising that. And our thoughts, I'm sure, are with everybody in our community on that front. And we are actively working to see what we can do, if only in terms of that, wrapping the arm round in a virtual way, of course. Thank you. Mike Solomon?
Nothing from me in the A+ team.
Okay, Mike Bell?
Thanks, Don. Just two things. So just to add to the comments about India, I mean, we do have a significant population in North Somerset with connections to Southwest India, who are obviously particularly affected by the events at the moment. So absolutely echo the thoughts and good wishes to them. And just to say that through North Somerset Together and our equalities team, we are engaging with various groups to establish if any local activity is going on to support the crisis in India, and we'll obviously share any information on that as we have it for those that wish to offer help and support. The other thing I just wanted to mention as well was that I've just seen that the High Court challenge on virtual council meetings, the verdict is in, and I'm afraid that the High Court has not supported the application for virtual meetings to continue. So we will not be lawfully be able to continue with virtual meetings of council going forward. So I think that's obviously very disappointing, and I would encourage members and residents to bear with us whilst we work our way through the implications of that over the next couple of months, because clearly before social distancing restrictions in particular are completely lifted, that's going to present some really significant challenges for formal council meetings, which will now have to go back to physical face-to-face meetings, but in venues that can support social distancing. So that's going to involve identifying appropriate external premises where these meetings can take place. And I'm sure in some cases we will need to delay and defer some meetings whilst we investigate and work through some of those issues. So very disappointing, and I know the government doesn't hang on our every word at these exec meetings, but the sooner that they can bring forward legislation to give local authorities the flexibility that we need to have both physical, hybrid and virtual meetings as appropriate, that would be incredibly helpful. It's no more than Parliament's had, and local government should be no different.
Well, that's extremely disappointing news, Mike, and a sad reflection on the way that government has led in terms of this whole process. I've been very much behind the curve in many of these things, and why on earth they couldn't find time to extend these and give local authorities the ability to reflect local demand is beyond me, really. And they wonder why Scotland wants to be independent. So, on that sad reflection, I will ask if my assistant executive colleagues, Nicola and did you have anything to say, Nicola?
Nothing from me, thank you very much, Don.
Robert?
Yes.
No, nothing from me. No, I've been in the role for a week, and I'm just familiarising myself with the position with the schemes that I'm going to be promoting. So at the moment, I've got the updates.
Thank you very much. And I will now finish the section by thanking all my colleagues and thanking the officers and indeed the people of North Somerset. We've managed to get through this so far. Let's continue that good work, keep those rates down, and work to get through this and out the other side and look forward to recovery where we can get life back to some form of normality. Bridget Petty.
I apologise, Councillor Davies.
You've already had your chance.
I appreciate that, and I do apologise. I believe that we are, I'm noting Councillor Bell's comments, we are 1 week away from an election, and the residents of North Somerset have the right to vote both in the police commissioner and then in Portishead we have an election. And I just wanted to ask a plea that people remain respectful of each other and continue the behaviour that they would do face to face online, because I know what it takes to stand up to be a candidate as a councillor, and we are all just residents trying to do our bit and help with our communities. And I would just ask that in the following week we stand up to our morals on good democracy, and I hope to see many people voting on the 6th of May for whatever causes they have, but that we remain respectful of each other both face to face and online. Okay. Thank you.
Well, just for clarity, it's the Portishead East ward which has one candidate, and I'd be remiss of me not to point out indeed that the residents, I believe, of Western Ingledeno Parish will also be voting in a by-election for their own parish council. Have I got that right, Nick?
That's correct, Chairman. Okay,
so I didn't want Western Ingledeno to feel that we were discriminating against them by not mentioning them. So 6th of May, yes, and I'm sure that by other thanks, perhaps prompted by that, is to all the electoral officers who will be encountering an election like no other on the 6th of May. And I know that we are, Nick, adding our resource help to other councils as a result of the implications of dealing with a pandemic election.
We are indeed, Chairman. We're offering support to our neighbours.
So thank you again for that. So the final item is urgent business, of which there is none as far as I know. Nick Brain's going to tell me something different.
Not that I know of, Chairman.
Lovely. So have a pleasant evening, everybody, even on this wet evening. I would imagine that visits to the hostelries of North Somerset will be somewhat more challenging without umbrellas. So if you are, please take an umbrella. Enjoy yourselves, and we'll see you soon. And thank you very much. I declare the meeting closed.